Nikita Soni and Brittany.
Yep, there you go. Yep.
Okay, so please start again. Hi everyone, I am Nikita Soni. I'm a new assistant professor at the University of Illinois Chicago CS department. And I'll be joining January 2022, so starting next semester. And my main research area is human-computer interaction with focus on designing advanced and creativity. So I'm really happy to be moderating this. Let's start the introduction of our panelists. And I don't see.
Yeah, I think someone's unmuted. If we all can make sure that our mics are muted when we're not speaking, that'll be really helpful. I'm trying to find if I can see who it is, but if you can hear us and you check and not, oh, I got it. Continue.
Yeah. So Brittany, can you call out our panelists? I don't see them on our screen.
Yep. So sure. So if you go to speaker view, all of the panelists are pinned, but I'll go ahead. On my screen, I see Dr. Sharma first. Do you want to start?
Sure. Hi. It's great to be here. So my name is Pratik Sharma. I'm an assistant professor at Indiana University. I work in the rural systems area, so I work in sort of cloud computing and operating systems and sort of large-scale machine learning platforms. And I graduated from UMass Amherst in 2018.
You guys can go in whatever order you'd like after that. But I mean, Leilani, you're up next on my screen if you want to go ahead.
Great, thank you. So I'm Leilani Gilpin. I'm a new assistant professor at UC Santa Cruz. My area of research is in artificial intelligence, and I work mainly on creating the mechanisms for complex opaque machines to explain themselves. The main application I've looked at is self-driving cars, but interested in expanding that as well. I did my PhD at MIT, and I'm coming from spending about a year at Sony's AI research lab.
Do we have another?
Sure, if I was next.
Yeah.
Am I next? Is that fine?
Yes. Yeah.
Brittany and Nikita. Thank you so much for organizing all this, by the way. Just wanted to say that from the start. My name is Pedro Lopez. I work at the University of Chicago. I'm an assistant professor in the computer science department. And just like Nikita, I also work in the field of human-computer interaction. My specialization in that field and the work that I do with my students tends to revolve around making virtual reality more immersive, designing new wearable interfaces to connect multiple people and let them share not just what they see, but also things like what they feel and things like that.
Okay, so we are done with all the introductions, I think, and we can start with some of the questions I'm seeing here on Discord. So first question, and I'll just combine two questions which I think are related, is how did you decide what to work on for your PhD, and what type of training did you go through in order to get started with that? So anyone can go. Okay, I can start. So for me, I just carrying on the discussion that was happening in the previous session. I started doing my master's at University of Florida. That's where I'm doing my PhD. I just defended it. So I started my project when I was doing my master's in the research lab, and I really liked the type of research, the project I was doing, and I then decided to carry out that project and started my PhD. So that's how I started working on the project that ended up being part of my dissertation research. So yeah.
Maybe I can go next. So I worked in the area of sort of hardware virtualization and cloud platforms during my master's, and that interest was triggered during a seminar course on that subject, which I really liked, and I really liked trying to read those papers. And that's the thing that I decided to specialize in. I was lucky enough to specialize in a similar area even during my PhD and continue working on that. But the road to that was a bit long-winded, as it always is. I was initially interested in sort of algorithms and graph theory, and really focused on that, found that too hard and decided to switch topics sort of later on during my master's. What is the other question? I think I missed the second part.
I was saying, is there a training part you did in order to help you understand what you want to work on in your research?
I guess that covers it. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So yeah, anyone wants to chime in? Pedro, any?
I can chime in there. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm with Pratik in that the road is a little bit winded and not obvious, right? So I applied to a couple of PhD programs with all very different advisors, because by the time I studied in Europe, and so everybody does a master's, just to clarify that question for the previous panel. That's a normal thing. Otherwise, they don't let you in the PhD door. And so I did my master's in HCI already, but in, as a master's student, I did all sorts of things. I worked on DJing things and how people interact with musical instruments, and I was interested in that. And I applied to different PhD programs, not knowing exactly what kind of advisor I wanted to work with. And it ended up being accepted by an advisor, Patrick Bowditch, who did at the time a lot of work on touch interfaces, so smartphones and improving touch and that sort of thing. So I thought I was going to work on that, and I started preparing myself mentally and having lots of ideas and talking to Patrick about things in that space. But together we realized, so for the students, that's what your advisor's role is, right? Together you can kind of be guided in that windy path up that mountain and learn some shortcuts and learn some cool paths or some dangerous paths. And okay, over there it's dangerous, don't go there. Over here it's really interesting, or that's dangerous, go there. That's cool. That's where the fun is. And I found out that I wanted to work on electrical muscle stimulation, which is a completely different thing. Even within HCI is a particularly special, weird technique, and I had a blast on it. But just like Pratik said, there were lots of turns, and I think part of it is to be ready for turning and ready for trying out different holes and opening and then seeing what's inside. Oh, I don't like that. I like that. And then you jump into that for a little bit and see if it works. And so, preparation is difficult because if you're exploring very different areas, you can't be prepared for all of them. That's just physically impossible. But I think there's some fun preparation about the curiosity of opening the doors and exploring what's inside, and then hopefully also being guided by someone that has pleasure in holding your hand sometimes, or just sometimes pushing you to the deep end, that sort of thing. At least what's what happened to me.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I also want to point to other inspiration, like my colleagues have gotten, like some students who were doing PhD with me did some internships like in early semesters of the PhD, and that kind of guided their research focus. Some research interests came out of classes, so it's like different amalgamation of different sources. So also some people just some ideas just come out of talking to people. Some people talk to I think Varun in the other panel was mentioning clinicians. So talking to people from other domains, that might spike some ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just quickly going to say, so I actually worked before my PhD, and I found that to be a great time for me to sort of figure out exactly what I wanted to do in my PhD. So I started a little bit later than some people, not right after undergrad, but having that work experience for me, I had a very well-defined problem that I knew I wanted to work on for my PhD. So working before really, really helped me with that.
So moving on to some other questions I'm seeing here. So are the research skills, so first is, what are other research skills that you acquire in your time as a PhD, and are these research skills useful only for research focused careers or other careers as well?
Right. So I think I sort of interpret this question as, what are the meta research skills? So I think this is the last chance to use that good word before it gets spoiled by Facebook. So I think what really helped me was a course that I took in my second semester on research methods at UMass Amherst. I think that was very useful. So I think in general, you get thrown into some sort of research problem in your first or second year, and you focus completely on it and hopefully publish, etc. And then you repeat. And I think it's useful to understand some of the historical research methods and philosophy of great researchers and how they approach problems, how they find problems, and how they deal with setbacks and difficulties. And I think identifying general trends and general patterns in research projects, I think work by Peter Medwar, E.O. Wilson, etc., and just reading all of that was something that was very useful to, and because you are going to have a lot of setbacks and you're going to have a lot of stumbling blocks, and realizing that these are not unique to your situation, right? Every research project has gone through this, and this is common. Even sort of great discoveries have been on these kind of hard paths. And so knowing that really helped me to sort of push through other research projects. And I guess also identify what research taste I had, what kind of research is something that I like and want to do. And that's, I think, asked in the Discord, how do you understand where the research fits into the work community, which we can talk about later, but that just segues onto that.
Yeah. I would also want to add, I agree with Prateek, but also want to add some other skills, I think, in terms of transferring, not only for the research focused jobs, but also for generally like communication skills. During PhD, you will get a lot of chances to present to broader community and kind of want to present more complex idea which you are researching on in a more straightforward way that can be understood by people who are not really familiar with your research. So I think giving talks, not only at conference level, but also within university, there are a lot of seminars that keep on happening within your labs. That is another thing you learn. Another thing is writing, that was also being discussed earlier. As it's not really simple, but the feedback loop you go through with your advisor, you write something, then the advisor comments on it and you improve it. It is another skill that will help you outside of more research focus and can be generalized, I think, in my opinion. And the last thing is rejections, accepting rejection. We all face rejections in academia a lot. For me, it was like I got one of the paper that's I'm very proud of now, got rejected for 2 years straight. So that really helped me understand how to take critiques in a more constructive way and then produce a good output. So
I think the other thing, sort of echoing off that, is also skills and sort of organization. I thought that because you have a lot of flexibility in a PhD, and we've sort of talked about that in the last sections, you also have to figure out a good organizational strategy that works for you. And I found that to be a skill that I learned way too late in my PhD, and now sort of thinking about that as a faculty. But I think it's something you don't really get to self-manage like this in really any other sort of path. So that was a really important skill I learned.
I'm violently agreeing with Leilani here. That's what I wanted to talk about. I mean, I think students often don't hear about that. It's an amazing thing to do PhD. It's a lot of hard work, and one of the difficulties is that you're self-organizing. You're making all the calendars. You're finding time. You're organizing multiple people. Often, most of you might do PhDs that are sort of very alone, and it's your own work. But in some subsets of many fields, you do PhDs with lots of undergrads, and you are managing those teams. You are organizing them. You're helping them understand the problem and solving their problems too. So you're learning how to be a manager too, which is amazing. You're doing a PhD plus the manager plus organizing plus all those things. So I think there's lots of skills that transfer. I had many friends that did their PhD and went off to do something else after, and including outside of academia. And when I asked them, they always say that it was, lots of things they learned, they apply every day, either managing. Some people went to science communication, and so the writing and the communication skills play off every day. So I would never worry about that because it's such a heavy learning job.
yeah. The next question I see is, how do you come to understand where you fit in your broader research community? And as well as, you can also talk about some of the good places you check for current research scope and immediate future research needs, and kind of help you understand where to go.
Yeah, I think at least it came for me by just trying to read as many papers as I could. trying to see what I really like, what I think I could do. I think that's just it ends up being a very personal thing, something that you really have to like and something that gets you motivated. Uh, Something to again think about is in terms of where you want your research to fall on, whether it's immediately applicable versus long term, right? And again, that's some kind of research taste that you develop uh, over time, and hopefully your advisor will help you refine and develop uh, that kind of a research thinking, that kind of professional training as a researcher, right? To identify what kind of research problems are interesting, what are easily publishable, right? What are fundable, kind of those kind of things. Those instincts you pick up by reading a lot of papers, hopefully towards the end of your PhD, reviewing a lot of papers for conferences and journals and figuring out, like, trying to basically develop your own internal classifier, right? Of what's a what's a research topic that you are going to like and what you think is going to be good versus something that you know is going to be a struggle for you to do and you to publish, right? So I think so read a lot. That's something that worked for me, and trying to uh, actively look at papers and see how would I have done that project, right? If something I really liked, I would sort of go to those researchers and ask them how long it took, what was their path, what were the stumbling blocks, and put myself in their shoes and see, all right, I can actually do this if I have to do something similar in the future.
Pedro or Lena, do you want to add anything?
Leilani, I don't know if you want to go first.
Sure. I was just sort of going to echo what Pratik said, and also I think that I found it's hard now with COVID, but when I was at a conference and I felt very comfortable talking to people, I'm very much an introvert and sometimes I'm very shy at conferences, but I think finding people that were excited about my research and also bringing me into the conversation that it's also supposed to be a bit of a social community and you should feel safe and welcome. And the first conference that I went where I felt like I had a group of people to talk to, I sort of knew I found my community and that was a place I was going to be going every year. But Pedro, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm in line with both what you said and Pratik said too. I think that's ultimately even a really nice feature of academia and doing the PhD is that you can just really reach out to these people, have these very deep intellectual conversations, though you might not even know them, right? I mean, in another job, you know, you don't walk from the Facebook headquarters to the Google headquarters and start asking questions because that's weird and copyrights and whatnot. But here it's just like you can do that all the time, and I think through that you can start to be informed more about the decisions of what you really want to work on, and it is through multiple of those you start to seeing like clear lights and clear paths as you have more of those discussions. Obviously, with your advisor is a big deal, but with colleagues, like with the other PhD students, with the other people at the conference, with the authors that you read the work, all of these things are more helpers than blockers. At the beginning, I thought, you know, when I saw a paper that I liked, I kind of have this knee-jerk reaction of like, oh, they did it, I will never be able to do it. And then later down the line, I was like, really useful. They did it. Now I can read it and understand how they did it and think of what I should do next, right? And so it's an unbelievable helpful space somehow where everybody's building on top of each other, and finding the path is also building on top of that stuff too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I know like we have our mentors, specific PhD advisors, but I think you can also reach out to professors who within your broader community who you are interested in talking to. I also want to say like workshops, at least in my field, there are like conference workshops that happen, that in those workshops, we really talk about like what are the pressing needs and challenges within this particular community in a particular area. So that might be something you can start attending to kind of know what are the meta level conversations that are happening that are not really haven't really gotten published yet, but where is the field heading towards? So that will help you understand the future needs of research in some way. I have one question here, like how can I convince professors to hire me when I'm flexible to explore other wings related to broader research domains? So basically, if I don't have a defined area where I want to work on or something. So.
Yeah, I'd love to see what even everybody else, Nikita and Leilani and Pratik think about this one, because I get this question a lot, and I'm advising some of my students who, when say students now, I'm seeing undergraduates at U Chicago who are working at HCI come to me for some advice about their grad school applications somewhere else, and I'm advising them, and they fall into different categories. People that absolutely know what they want to do, and people who are very versatile. And I sometimes actually find more difficult if you are too narrow than if you are more versatile. Because if you are too narrow, you first narrow your choices down because maybe Pratik doesn't work on a thing you work on, but then Leilani works, and now you only have one choice. But also, if you go talk to Leilani, like they might think it's really heavy what you're focused on, and they might have other ideas for you. And so sometimes I say, you can communicate a vision that you have. So if you're on the narrow side, I think you can communicate a vision without saying, this is the only thing I would do, because I think searching for an advisor means you want to be advised. You want to have some guidance. So you want to have input from others. So you have to have always some flexibility. If you're the super flexible student, on the other hand, I think, again, it's useful to say, I can still communicate a vision. I can articulate a research project. Yet my advantage is that I'm really interested in ML as a whole, or CS as a whole, or HCI as a whole, and that's great. I mean, advisors get super excited. Wow, here's a person who I can mold and shape and wants to work on me on crazy things, right? So I see it as a superpower. Don't need to hide it, but don't forget, like someone said in the previous panel, I think if you're too versatile, too broad, you also have to show that you can articulate a question. So you can even say, here's an example. I'm gonna just articulate one, and just to demonstrate you can do it. I think that's kind of what I see it. I don't know what everyone else thinks, but I really want to learn this one because I've been in this one for a while.
Yeah, I think I don't know how you all will approach this, but at least from the purpose of the statement of purpose or essay, I think it's important to stay a little bit consistent. For example, what motivated you to do PhD is something that you can show in terms of like your projects you did or something you did that really made you curious about this, and that's what is motivating you. Some classes you took. So at least like whatever you want to do your PhD in or whatever, even it's broad, it's fine, but at least stay consistent in some way with what you have already done. So it helps us convince, okay, you already have some demonstrable skills, but if you can pick up other skills if you are down the line, you figure out what you want to really focus on. Yeah.
Oh, the other thing I wanted to echo is I think Aloni responded on the Discord that maybe trying to convince professors to hire me is not exactly the best wording. I think it really is about fit. And usually when I find a student that I think is motivated but might not have a sort of, fine-tuned research focus, I usually ask them what problems they're interested in solving. So to see, are they someone who wants to build systems? Are they someone that's a big idea thinker? And then from there, we can sort of think about what that research idea looks like. But I think if you're a very broad person, that's great, but you should also think, what kind of contributions do you like to make? Because that sort of helps me to help students find a good fit, whether that's me or someone else.
Yeah, I just want to quickly echo what everyone has said. I would definitely prefer somebody with a broader skill set and broader interests than something very narrow, because you don't know if you really want to work on that for the next 5-10 years. And with research being so cross-disciplinary now, you need students with broader interests that can sort of teach you different skills. So yeah, I think broad interests are great. And as long as you remain slightly focused in your statement of purpose, saying, all right, these are the skills that I'm really focused on and I'll bring to the table, that's amazing.
I also just want to chime in real quick and point out that as a second year faculty, I've all of a sudden started getting a lot more emails from students that are interested. And I want to point out that the emails that I actually respond to are not the ones that are super targeted at me, but the ones that say, here are my interests, here's what I do. Here's why I reached out to you specifically, right? I think there's something interesting we could work on, and here's what it is. Can we talk about this? These are the people that I follow back up with, and the applications that if the admissions committee comes to me, I'm going to take those into more serious consideration than the ones that feel even sometimes artificially targeted at me specifically.
Yeah, I want to back that up because I'm also having this experience. So basically no one reached out to me. And then I had a student, or like I'd occasionally get stuff that was definitely very spammy, that was based on something that I did that like looks very reinforcement learning-y, and everybody thinks I do reinforcement learning. I don't do reinforcement learning. Like I'm stuck teaching reinforcement learning, but like I don't do reinforcement learning. But then I had a student who reached out to me, background in econ, and was like, hey, I'm super interested in working with you because I really like your vision and it fits with my vision of the world and what I want to do. And he explained that like he is very interested in the role that like software systems play in shaping like developing countries, and that he's like, you know, he's sort of interested in like, you know, participatory design type stuff, but like actually more on the technical side. And so was like, I've looked at some of your work and I think the way that you view things and view systems building works really well for me. And I wanted to know like if you had time to chat. And that was how he approached it. It was not like, you know, I'm trying to sell myself to you. It's like, hey, I've been thinking a lot about the different areas of computer science that exist and what I know about them so far. And this is what I think like, this is the match that I think makes sense to me. And I was very happy to also be like, here are a bunch of other people you can talk to as well who do like really cool stuff that I think you should consider. And so as long as it's coming from a place where you're like, you very much want like to sort of separate out the anxiety of what is my future going to hold from like the intellectual exercise of what is the future that can actually lead to success for me. That's a really important thing to do. And it's very hard to do right now in this environment and under these circumstances, knowing that deadlines are coming up. But this is just to echo a lot of the things that Brittany just said. So.
All that to say, we're getting to the end. So Dr. Soni, please feel free to wrap up your beautiful panel. You guys did fantastic.
Yeah, I thank you for all the questions. Yeah, it's 2 minutes over. So yeah, wrap up.
These were fantastic conversations. Again, if you have more questions that didn't get answered, please post them on Discord. There are a lot of great conversations happening on there right now. And as Emma mentioned earlier, these are things we can preserve. So please feel free to put your questions there. I'm going to